hopefully other people will join us soon. So welcome everyone to our Exploring Catalan Wines webinar. We are really excited about this one. If any of you have if any of you have joined us on any of our previous webinars, each one of them has a different take. Each one explores something different, or we talk about things differently. So can't promise you what the format is exactly going to be like, but in terms of the content, we're going to just be having fun, chatting, going through the wines, and this one in particular, more so than we've previously shown, we're going to get you guys more involved, being much more interactive with your comments, your questions, and hopefully, if I can get it to work, we'll get some of you to ask your questions live. So just to kind of point out, if you've not been to a webinar on Zoom before, we have a little chat box. So if you hover over your screen, depending on whether you're using laptop or iPad, if you look for the chat box area, if you click on that, you should be able to see what other people are saying. We can talk in there, you guys can talk in there. And we will, if you have a look on there, you should be able to select either all panelists or all panelists and attendees. So depending on whether you want the message to go out to everyone, hello Kelly, or whether you just want it to come to us for us to see and kind of reply privately. There is also a Q&A box in there if you have any specific questions that you want answered. The chat kind of, as it says, it's a chat, it kind of goes through and scrolls past. With the Q&As, I'll be going through those and making sure that those are all answered. So if you have something that you definitely want answered, try and pop it in the Q&A so we can pick that up. We can't see or hear any of you unless I turn you into a panelist. If I do that, you will get a little notification beforehand asking your permission to be unmuted. So don't worry, we're not going to suddenly put you on screen full view before letting you know that we're going to do that. So yeah.
Does someone have trouble signing in?
Okay. So they should have been sent. I think everyone gets sent a unique sign-in, a unique login through their email. Amelia, do you want to chat and I'll see if I can find if there's another way of doing this?
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm super. Do I want to chat? You know me, guys. That's when the half American side comes out. So no, we're super excited because we're going to be focusing on a region which is dear to my heart. When I was doing a virtual tasting last week, people said, where in the world do you want to go next to explore wine? And I said, Catalonia or Catalonia, depending whether you're Castilian or saying it the English way. And today we have Andy and Andrew, and we have two of their wines from their winery in Catalonia. So we're going to be going through their wines, but also talking about, I think, why Catalonia is such an exciting region and how you can find all kinds of styles and all kinds of price points too, which then ties in very nicely to next week when we move on to premium Catalan wines. But yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Andy and Andrew, just to kind of give us a little spiel and intro.
Firstly, I'm just going to say a little bit about me and the three hats I'm wearing tonight, and then I'll hand on to Andrew to tell you a little bit about his background. You will have ordered your wines tonight through an organisation called buycatalanwines.co.uk, and that is an online shop that we set up really in response to COVID-19, because most of our wines we sell to restaurants and bars and a little bit of specialist retail. And obviously those outlets are not really doing a lot at the moment. So we have a lot of demand from people who know our wines to make them available online. And we're delighted to be working tonight with Soma and the team to get you some of those wines to try that you'd usually possibly be having in restaurants or bars. The business that imports those wines is called Different Wines Limited, and we set that up in response to a request really from a number of producers in Catalonia who, although they were producing top class, world class wines, were finding it unable to get a listing for those wines with importers in the UK. and the UK is the world's most competitive wine market. And so we thought perhaps we can kill two birds with one stone and bring not only our own wines in that we're making from Sea Alamara, which we'll talk more about later, but also wines from other top-class Catalan producers, typically small, people who are more artisanal, and offer those to the British public. And we found over the last 3 years we've been doing that, we've got a fantastic reaction. And my story goes back to I'm essentially an IT guy through most of my career, but learned a little bit about wine when I was in California for a couple of years with the family, and actually did a winemaking course at UC Davis while I was there. When we came back to Europe, I spent some time studying wine really as a consumer rather than as a producer. And it was only when we bought a new house here in Oxfordshire and had a spare acre of land, I said to the missus, why don't we plant some vines? And for 17 years, we happily made a little bit of wine in Oxfordshire, won some prizes, but it was never commercial. It was really a hobby. And I found myself via a sort of circuitous set of events in southern Catalonia, and tried some of the wines as you do, local wines, and thought, this is bizarre. These are fantastic wines, and I've never heard of them, despite the fact I've done quite a bit of wine education. Thought not a lot more about it until 6 months later, and a prospectus for a vineyard for sale in this very area dropped into my email box. And of course, talked it through with my other half, expecting her to say, don't be stupid, we don't want a vineyard in Spain. But we did all the research and talked to a lot of the local producers, said to them, is this a good vineyard? Is this going to produce good wine? And they all said, if we got the money, we'd buy it. So yeah, it's pretty good. So in 2013, we leapt in and bought the vineyard and continued to buy a few more parcels in the same valley over the intervening 2 years. And then decided that having been selling the grapes, the only way we could make any sort of financial sense of it was to actually make our own wine. So Sea Alamara was set up in 2016. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, as I say, later on. But just in passing, it's not a typo. It's not cellar spelt wrongly. Sea is the Catalan word equivalent of bodega or winery. So you'll find a lot of Catalan wineries are called Sea something or other. And actually Alamara happens to be a Catalan for a fire basket, the sort they used to use signalling between villages in the Middle Ages. And our logo is the fire basket, and all our wines tend to have a fire theme, but come back to that later. Andrew, you should introduce yourself.
Good evening. So I'm British originally, and basically fell in love with wine at university, bit by bit, and then by the time I left, I was hooked. So I was an engineer, studied engineering, worked until my early 30s in engineering, and then, but I was very, above average interested in wine, went to Margaret River and Stellenbosch and all these places. And then I was in tech engineering, so I could see I was going to get laid off in the dot-com crash. So I had already been thinking about it, and I just managed, the timing was very lucky, got laid off. And within 6 weeks, I was at University of Adelaide studying quite a famous one-year course, which is designed for people who have a kind of sciencey background, but want to get into wine quickly. So that's what I did. And then after that, I have been traveling the world making wine, 5 continents. But my first love has always been Spain. I've been here on and off in total about 12 years, worked in, I think, 7 DOs, and I've been to every province in the country. So, I know it fairly well. And yeah, I've been working with Andy. I'm based in Tarragona on the East Coast, which is an hour down from Barcelona. I've been working with Andy we've done 4 harvests now, right, Andy? Yeah, so coming up for 4 years. Yeah. Is that enough?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I find it so interesting when you've talked to people about how they got into wine, and often they've done something completely different beforehand. And it makes me feel better because I come from marketing background, so coming into wine, yeah. It's great to hear other people's stories as well. And I guess it's just for that that love of the wine and, you know, wanting to know more, and then just getting involved and more involved, and it just kind of takes off. So the wines that we've got to taste, and so do you too, I think most of the people who are joining the webinar have the wines. I don't think there are many who haven't.
Like, this is water, nothing stronger, when you see me like swigging it back.
Yeah, except for Amelia.
I'm going to live vicariously through you. This, yeah, it intensifies my resolve to get to Catalonia as soon as possible.
Yeah. And we've got the Antistana, which is Xarel·lo grape, and it's a different take on the Xarel·lo grape than I've had before. So I was absolutely delighted by it, because I love those zingy fresh wines. And then the Luminegre, having that, which has got some Tempranillo and Syrah and Carignan in it. It kind of, again, a little bit spicy, which was interesting, because you normally get that kind of overheated, or you think of like really kind of warming Spanish wine. So to get that kind of elegance was interesting. And then the Pinzillado, which I haven't yet tried, but got it with me. So interesting to hear what that's going to be like and taste with you as you talk about it, Andy and Andrew. And it's and that one, it started off being made as a trade wine, so going to bars and restaurants, but in the current climate, unfortunately, that plan has not happened. So, but the good thing is, it means that we get to taste it as customers, so that's fantastic. So yeah, we've got a couple of questions have come in already saying we've already started drinking the wines. Absolutely fine. I'm glad not all of you are waiting to try the wines, because it's already like 15 minutes in and we haven't started talking about the wines. Of course, just, you know, this is a relaxed show. Yeah, please do join in as you wish, but yeah, don't drink too much. So would you guys like, I mean, Amelia, have you had Xarel·lo on its own before?
I have, only a couple of times. I guess most people would have come across it in Cava, and particularly if it's Cava, which is just basing itself on the international grapes of Catalonia as opposed to blending in Chardonnay or whatever. And I've read some like really like interesting articles on it saying that it's actually got more resveratrol in Xarel·lo than Pinot Noir, and so actually that's why Cava can age so well. Like when I like, one of my favorite Cava houses is Cremona, and I've had some really gorgeous like 20-year-old Cavas which are singing, and I've read a lot of like articles really singing accolades about this grape, and just being like, everyone talks about Pinot Noir like really kind of giving like structure and interesting like finesse to champagne, but actually Cava, because it has that Xarel·lo grape, then it actually does have that ageability. And then you think that now they're making all these antioxidant beauty products with grapes and things like that, and then I'm like, maybe they should, that's another little side project, I don't know.
Too late for some of us, but perhaps I ought to kick off just by sort of getting people placed as to where we're talking about geography-wise. Geography is not everybody's cup of tea. So we're going to throw up a couple of maps on the screen here. So hopefully you can read them a little bit at least. So we're over here in the red bit on the right-hand side. So you can see there are a number of different areas in Catalonia that make wine, and we'll look at those in a little bit more detail. But the only reason for looking at this is just to see how it compares to the rest of Spain. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with Rioja, and that's this orange bit here in the top middle. And you can see that actually Catalonia has, actually it's slightly less, it's a bit deceptive in this map, it's slightly less total area of grapes than Rioja. And so it's just as important in terms of production as the great wines from Rioja. And obviously there are other areas in Spain. Down the south here we've got sherry, we've got the great whites from Galicia. But just looking again at Catalonia itself, we're really going to be talking about two areas today. The first wine, the Antistana, is from Penedès, which is just here southwest of Barcelona. And the second two wines from our own winery are down here in the very southwest of Catalonia, from an area called Terra Alta, or Terra Alta as it tends to be named in Catalan. So the first wine is from Penedès, and it's from a winery called Mas Comtal. And the reason for the name is these lands used to be owned by the Counts of Barcelona, so hence Comtal. And they have about 40 hectares, all organic, with a lovely view. Of those of you who've been to Barcelona, you might recognize Montserrat in the background here. And the winery is run by a lovely, formidable lady called Marta Miro. And they make wines, including a range of cavas and still wines, and indeed sweet wines, a whole range of varieties. The Antistana, which I'm now going to open up, is made from very old, typically 60-year-old Xarel·lo vines, and that's actually quite old for the Penedès area. And this is made in stainless steel, and I'm sure Amelia and Andrew can discuss all the different ways you can deal with Xarel·lo, because actually it's a very flexible grape. It's a bit like a Chardonnay. You can make it in a lot of different styles. But this is made in a very clean, elegant, crisp style. It's a nice pale lemon colour on the nose. We've got a little bit of pear, a little bit of citrus. It's not a huge nose, but very pleasant, very clean. And on the palate again, I'm getting pears. It's a little bit oily, not tasting of oil, but in terms of texture on the palate. And that again is a typical of Xarel·lo. This is coming in at, says consulting his notes, 13.5% alcohol. So there's a fair wodge of alcohol in there. In fact, most Catalan wines, because it's hot and sunny, you'll find do produce quite high levels of alcohol. But this still has lovely crisp acidity there, which keeps it, for me, fresh. And I'm missing half my bottle because I'm having a crab salad this evening, and she nicked some of it. It's perfect with that, lovely with seafood. Very good also through to sort of chicken dishes, which have got a little bit of spice to them. I'm sure Andrew and Amelia can add a little bit of detail to.
Yeah, maybe if I could just pick up a little bit on a couple of things there, Andy. So it is quite an interesting grape, as Amelia was saying. It's principally known for cava, and well, sparkling now we should say, because a lot of the cava guys have formed different associations. But I'd say in the last 10, 15 years or so, it seems to be gaining an interest as a standalone varietal, often with a kind of younger generation coming in, and so they're not scared to experiment. So quite a lot of these places are sort of biodynamic, organic, some natural wines as well. And it's quite an interesting grape because it can go in quite a number of ways. I think, you do get that acidity that Andy says. Often a lot of kind of, hi Ali.
Sorry, I haven't finished the crab salad yet. Bye everybody.
You get the acidity, you get some sort of lime blossom sometimes, but what Andy was saying as well, the oily, you sometimes get a kind of like a sort of Vaseline, like you're getting an old Riesling kind of thing. Right now I thought, is this just me? So I looked it up, and it is true, and it possibly goes hand in hand with what Amelia was saying about resveratrol, although they're obviously separate compounds. It's kind of an interesting grape because it's got all these different attributes that, it's not going to perhaps please everybody, but because it can be made in a number of different ways, and it usually, 13.5 is probably about as high as it's going to go. It's often perhaps more like 13, 12.5. So, it's sort of at the mid-alcohol range, but because it's the sort of oomph part of cava, it's got a bit more weight to it. So it's kind of weighty, but at the same time crisp. So, a lot to play with.
And how, percentage-wise, how many producers do you think are actually working with it just as a single varietal and not blending it to make sparkling wine?
Good question. don't really know the real figure. I mean, there's 8,000 hectares in Catalonia, in Penedès. So it's the majority Great Penedès. 8,000 hectares is a lot, you know.
Yeah.
I would guess, I mean, most of that goes for sparkling. So percentage-wise,
there is a bit of a geography issue in that Penedès used to be a sea, and it has mountains on the coastal side and on the inland side. And actually the best single varietal wines come from the slopes on either side rather than in the valley. So it's mainstream Cava in the valley, and on the sides, which is where Mascomtal is, for instance, you get these really strong terroir influences that give you these great single varietal wines. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I don't think it quite answers your question, but I reckon there's at least 20 interesting producers in Catalonia, of Xarel·lo.
Well, we've got a lot of people commenting that they're loving this white, whether it's with Ali's crab salad that we'd all like some of, or,
sorry, I can't push that down the screen.
Or someone's having it with lobster, which sounds amazing.
Nice.
And yeah, so a lot of people saying very drinkable. Tassel's saying that she detects the pear. Didn't get a strong nose, but gets a thumbs up from me. So that's fantastic. And then we've also got a question in the question box, which is about the spelling of the grape varieties. Now, Xarel·lo's Catalonian variety, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and what I learned from my holidays in Barcelona was that when they've got the dot, you pronounce the L's, the double L's, but if they don't have the dot, then it's
absolutely. It is a unique Catalan character in its own right, the double L with a dot in the middle. And you can tell a lot about Catalans when you actually understand if you put the dot at the bottom, which is the easiest thing to do on an English keyboard, that is actually a very bad thing, and they'd rather you didn't bother at all.
So a dash is better. Oh no, I've been making the error.
I found out tonight in checking it out and thinking, you know, how can I type it so it's in the right place? But yeah.
Having spent time living there and working, then question to both of you, how would you describe the culture of Catalonia different compared to other parts of Spain?
Well, a lot of Catalans would say that it's Europe's newest republic. It has a very strong independence tradition. Obviously, a lot of people in the cities, particularly Barcelona and Tarragona, are incomers, and they don't feel the same way. But certainly out in the vineyards, there is a very strong independent streak. Andrew, you live with it every day. I mean, what's your view?
Yeah, politics quite important here. I try, you know, it's everywhere. I don't get involved myself. The Catalans compared to, if you want to say, the rest of Spain, for me, they're a bit more reserved, a bit more serious. They can definitely let their hair down. You know, they have some fiestas or festas as good as anyone in Spain. Here in Tarragona, we have, you know, crazy fireworks in the streets. We've got all these mythical beasts. And also Southern Catalonia very famous for human towers, castles, castling. Here's a real hotbed, and just I might get into trouble if I say that, because up the road they're also a real hotbed, so I don't want to cheese anyone off. But these are human towers. If you've never seen them, they involve maybe 100 people or more, and they can get to 10. The world record is 10 layers high on each other's shoulders with no scaffolding, no anything. So they're into this. They practice all winter. They have a few drinks, and then in the summer it's not exact. It is a competition, and they take it seriously. And in fact, there's actually World Championships too, here held in Tarragona. So it's a big, big local thing, which is unique well, not more or less unique. There's a bit in Valencia, but it's a real Catalan thing, which is, you know, fun and quite amazing, actually.
Are there any certain like delicacies food-wise in Catalonia, like which are very like Catalan and they were proud of?
Yeah, I mean, all parts of Iberia make cured sort of sausagey, you know, things sort of choritos or sausage kind of thing. In Catalan, there's botifarra, black and white, which is a sort of I mean, we translate it as a sausage, but you know, obviously there's more to it than that, and they're into that. There's different variants of dried versions, secayona, for example, and then inland a bit in Lleida, they're big on snails, and and if you're in there, what's that, Andy?
I mentioned calçots as well.
Oh yeah, the big one. Kind of down here, they have this thing like a spring onion, and in more or less December, January is the season. And the Catalan around here, they go absolutely crazy for this. It's a big thing. It's all day lunch. You have about 20 of these spring onions barbecued, and
They're that
all,
big. They're not tiny things.
no, I mean this is a big lunch.
Spring onions, yeah.
You burn them. You pull off all the outer bit, and inside there's this super tender like onion, but not really oniony. It's more like a leek. And then you have it with this piquant sauce. You have as many of those as you can. A lot of drinking. And then a huge meat fest. I mean, it's a 6-hour thing, right?
That's awesome.
We've got Dan saying that he's had them dipped in sauce. What kind of sauce?
Romesco.
Romesco.
Ah, yum. Oh,
And going back to the snails, do they pair with white or red?
They're usually done in sort of tomatoey sauce, the ones I've had. So I'd go probably more red. Yeah.
Should we move on to the red now? Do you want to give us a little info of the next one, the Lumi Negre?
Yeah, I'll just put the screen back again, just to. So, Sierra Amara, we're about only 6 hectares of our own vines, but we also buy grapes from a number of local producers. We've got a whole variety of different types of grape, and we are still very much learning. We mentioned Mascomtal. They've actually owned their land since the end of the 15th century. So compared to our 2013, we're a little bit still learning. But we have, particularly when it comes to this wine, we have some Tempranillo. And Tempranillo is a very famous grape in Spain, but typically not in Terralta. It doesn't do brilliantly in the area. And another grape that also doesn't do brilliantly in the area is Syrah. It does better. There are some very nice Syrah wines in Catalonia. But curiously, the deficiencies of those two varieties compensate for each other when you put them together. So the wine that we're having next, which is the Lumi Negre, is principally made from those two varieties, Syrah and Tempranillo. And it's actually co-fermented, and I'll let Andrew and Amelia talk about the difference between co-fermentation versus blending. But this was very much a happy accident. I'm sure you can take credit for it, Andrew, the decision to bang the two together.
I think Andrew should explain this. What made you, well, please can you explain the process and what made you decide to choose that very specific process?
Well, Tempranillo is really at home in northern Spain, and in Catalonia, it's basically a warmer region. So the Tempranillo grapes, the issue that we had is that, and that's actually just right behind there, just behind me to the left on the screen. That's the Tempranillo Vineyard there. They, it gets ripe too quickly in terms of sugar. So the alcohols, potential alcohols are going up, and the acid is dropping out. But when you taste the berries, they still tasted a bit green, a little bit sort of astringent. So we're like, what do we do? If we pick them when the astringency is gone, the figures are going to be, a little bit off the chart. Yeah. And as Andy said, we'd been looking around for other grapes. We were new in the area. Syrah, although not native to the area, is more established and it does well there. It's a more warm climate grape, or at least sunnier climate sort of a grape. And when I was looking at the numbers, you go for the vineyard beforehand, sampling the grapes, you take it to our lab, we analyze, you get the acid and the sugar basically. And I was like, well, these are like, they're like opposites, right? One is full of sugar and not much acid. And the other one, has not got too much sugar and it's got a lot of acid. So it seems, it was our first year. Why not just stick them together? And magically, the numbers came out brilliantly. I mean, I was an engineer initially, so for me it was an engineering solution, and fortunately, the flavors sort of compensated each other.
But co-ferment rather than blend later?
Well, I think if you're going to do something, I mean, if a ferment, if the figures are in a sort of risky area, like very high pH, you're asking for a bit of trouble, potentially. You might get some Brettanomyces. It won't age too well in barrel.
My eyes are clouding over now, Andrew.
Yeah, so it's better to have the wine in a good position as soon as possible, rather than have two
Stability.
dangerous components, wait a
Yeah.
year and then stick them together.
That makes sense.
And this is actually our second year of Uni Negri. So, as Andrew said, the first year was a bit of an experiment, but it was so successful. It was an award-winning wine. And we continued it in 2017, which is the one we're drinking tonight. And I get sort of reddish fruits on the nose. Palate is a little bit warm. But we call this our barbecue wine. It's absolutely fantastic with anything off the barbecue. So Caltots would have been great with this. It's got some really quite smooth tannins. It didn't actually hit oak barrels. This is just made in stainless steel, so no time in oak at all. So the tannins you've got are from the fruit itself. But they're smooth and integrated. And again, given the this ability to mix the two grapes, the acidity is there to sit alongside the richness of the fruit.
Did you, because you said it was given an award, did you find the award actually very helpful for consumers who might not really know the region or the, you know, what, they don't know how to pronounce the name of the wine, that kind of thing?
I think it depends on the level of the award. So I think if you've got a gold, people will definitely pick it off the shelf. If you've got a bronze, it's a bit more debatable, really. And one of the changes probably over the last 15 years has been proliferation of people providing, wine marking schemes and awards. So you can always get an award for your wine. The question is, does the consumer understand whether that's any better than any other? And, I'd love your feedback on that, Amelia, because I'm a little bit unsure whether it's really a benefit.
Well, from the marketing things that I've looked into, the awards attract people to the wines. So something that they might not have considered before, when they see the award on it, it makes them pick it up. And they say once it's in the hand, it's hard to get back on the shelf. So that's, it's kind of, you become into the consideration set. I mean, Amelia, is that similar to what you've learned?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly different in the States. It's all about points. It's amazing. Like, it's still very, very much about points. I kind of feel like that's died down a bit in the UK, whereas like here, definitely you see in supermarkets, like 99 points, Wine Spectator, Wine Enthusiast, Vinous, like all of those. And that's definitely how Costco churned through. I mean, Costco's like a big, big wine dominator over here, selling their wine around nationwide. But definitely, yeah, I would agree that once it's in the hand, it's hard to put down. I mean, Sarah and I both kind of bonded over People's Wine Awards, which actually lets the public decide, and actually, because it's like, okay, great, that's an award, but how do you make this relatable? And actually, lots of the time when people are looking for wine, it's not that they're getting up because they're like, oh yeah, I'm going out because I really feel like a cool climate Pinot. No, most of the time, yes, maybe like some people in the wine world, but like actually a lot of the time it's, oh my goodness, I'm in a rush, I need to go to my local store and I need to get some wines because I've got girlfriends coming over, or I need something for the family, family dinner, or whatever, or I need something to relax at the end of the day, or I'm looking to buy something to impress. So they're very, very specific lifestyle or mood determinators. Did I just make up a word? I always seem to make up words so, I mean, I did kind of like the People's Choice because like that actually, it was made for consumers and it's based on lifestyle categories. So I think people then know, oh, great, why this wine has been awarded is because it is specifically for this category based on this circumstance, in real life. And then that immediately gives you a context for the award as opposed to a decanter or whatever, where people won't be like, oh, I don't really know what that is. So I thought that was a very good initiative on Janet Harrison's part.
Yeah.
We found it quite difficult positioning our wines against those categories because some of them we could see fitting into 3 or 4.
I think some people did put them into.
Some people did. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, I'd love to hear what all you guys watching, do wine awards mean anything to you? Does it help you decide what to choose? Does it make you pick something up off the shelf? Because, winemakers, I'm guessing, Andy and Andrew, you're always wondering, should we go for this award? Should we enter for that? Or should we just let people decide on the labels or our reputation, and
It's a significant cost, and if there isn't a real benefit, then I'd quite happy not spend the money, if I'm honest. If people like it as a way to differentiate, then great, we'll do it. But the trouble is, if you've got 30 bottles on the shelf, all with a different medal, it's getting to the stage where it fails to be a differentiator again. That's the problem.
Yeah, which is why I think what Amelia was saying with the People's Choice Wine Awards, where it's this won gold in the barbecue one, or
exactly, yeah, or the rosé, or the kind of stay home and kind of watch Netflix wine, like did they have a Netflix
category, was it?
I think it was like one of like stay at home, like literally like a chilled, relaxed kind of stay at home, which kind of in quarantine, that category will probably be getting quite a lot of use.
Right, I just want to go through and have a few look at some of the comments, because we've got some great feedback here. So seriously dark in colour, which except it's got that lovely red tinge, which is really nice. And then really smooth, Lumi's lovely and smooth, thank you, Oliver. And then smells gorgeous, toffee, someone else agreeing with toffee. Dark chocolate. And then there's a few questions about the oak. So you mentioned it's not oaked.
Yeah, it's not. We actually made a change from 2016 to 2017. The 16 did go into barrel, but it went into old barrels. And when you do that, what you're really doing is putting some oxygen into the wine. All the oak flavour has been leached out years ago, so you're not really adding oak tannins, you're just adding some oxygen to the wine. And Syrah in particular eats oxygen. So in this case, we treated it a little bit differently. It stayed in stainless, but we still added the oxygen through other processes and achieved the same effect. And you don't, for me, for younger wine, you don't really need the oak.
And then we've got Chrissy, I think it's Chrissy, and I can't see the rest of the name. We have 2 yes and 2 not so sure. I'd love to know what the not so sures are about. I'm sure you don't, Andy, but I love to know.
I will confess that although I loved the 2016, I'm not quite so in love with the 2017. I don't know if it's like having children, you have to love them all equally. But when it comes to wine, I don't. So this one isn't, it has a great place, with barbecue food, the sun shining outside. I drink a dangerously large quantity of it. But probably amongst my children, it's probably not my absolute favourite.
Because people are talking about a slight smokiness. What if people decanted it? Would that make a difference?
Well, we do find that this wine can throw quite a sediment, so you might want to decant it. And particularly if you hold it up to the light and look at the state of the bottle, and if you do see sediment, then it is probably good to decant it. And actually, those of you who are not drinking it all tonight, come back to it tomorrow, cork it up.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Put it in the fridge and see what you think tomorrow, or even the day after. So it does develop quite a bit with time. And those of you perhaps it's not your favourite tonight, perhaps tomorrow you might change your mind.
Yeah, I mean it's our most polarizing wine, I'd say, Andy. Some people really like it, some people not so keen. But what you're saying, Amelia, I mean, we did decant it in the winery. Syrah is quite reductive. It was in stainless steel. So we basically, took it and put it in another tank.
Oh, right.
And we actually deliberately splashed it, and we did that on more than one occasion, to get some air in there.
Yeah.
To sort of open it up a bit. Now, obviously, you can't do it once it's in the bottle. So, like you say, either decanting it again, probably not a bad idea, or as Andy says, drink a half, keep it in the fridge with the cork in, or not even, and come back to it the next day and see how it is.
I love doing that, just kind of out of like nerdy curiosity, just to see, because like wine is a living thing and it's going to evolve, and they're like people, like sometimes you just need to like chill out a bit, and then you get other nuances, and so I really enjoy doing that. And people often don't realize that you don't necessarily need to vacuum pump. It's just the next day, actually just putting a cork, it's fine, and just letting it evolve naturally. I always say to people, I always say to people, obviously it's great if you have love Coravin, if you can get hold of that, baggy pump. But the next, if you just have put a cork in it, it's still really interesting.
Very good.
Shall we move on to the third wine, the Pinziada? So I'm really
Yeah.
on that one.
So, as Soma mentioned at the outset, this is a wine that we actually specifically bottled for the restaurant trade here in the UK. And introduced it just at the wrong time. Sod's law. Pinzelada actually is Catalan, or indeed Spanish, for brushstroke, so hence the brushstroke on the label. And, you know, I could tell you lots of good stuff about how we're painting a picture of Spanish Catalan wines with this wine. Actually, it's just a very, very nice drinking wine. We mentioned that we didn't use oak for the Yumi. This one had 12 months in oak, and it's a slightly different blend. This is principally Carignan with a little bit of Grenache, which again are probably the two most common red wine grapes in Catalonia. And because it was designed for the on-trade, it is incredibly good value. We do have another wine which you'll be seeing next week, those of you who are joining us for that, which is a similar blend. It's a little bit more refined, it's a little bit more special, but this has a lot of the same characteristics. It had, what was it, Andrew, in terms of new oak, it was probably only about less than 10%.
Well, probably a bit more than that. I'd say closer to a quarter, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
And this, again, it's from our first vintage. So this is 2016, and we're very much still learning. And I think we've ended up with a fantastic wine. It's got a great nose. You can tell the oak content there over the previous one. This is more dark fruits than the red fruits we had on the previous wine. Again, very well integrated tannins, retains good acidity. And this one, although, you know, it's a 2016, it will continue going for quite a number of years. So if you've opened it, tough, you better drink it. But if you want to buy some more, you can stick it in your cellar, and this will probably still be improving in 3, 4, 5 years.
How much, sorry, because I didn't get the pack. How much does that retail at?
This is what I need to ask my sales director, who's... to be quite honest, I'm not sure. Let me look it up for you in a minute.
I'll look at it just out of curiosity. Yeah.
She'll come flying up and tell me in a second.
Because I just do think that part of Spain, it just delivers such great value for money. It's really funny. I've been talking to a few SOMs just because I'm based in LA, and I was talking to a few SOMs in LA and in Chicago, and I was like, oh, you know, I love Catalonia wine. Like, where can we find it? And really, the only presence they have are in fancy pants restaurants and kind of the really expensive ones from Priorat and whatever. But there's like nothing. It's really hard to find the really interesting stuff, which we're talking about.
Priorat wines are fantastic, but you're looking at, you know, 50 to 100 quid, you know, for the really top wines.
Well, and Clos d'Or is like $300. You know, in a restaurant, in a fancy pants restaurant.
This is currently $9.95 on special offer on the website on bycatalanwines.co.uk. So we think that's excellent value. This is artisanal wine, handmade. You know, all our wines hand harvested. Andrew personally squeezes each grape in the winery as it comes in.
We actually
fantastic.
Did do that a bit this year. We did do 2 small scale trials. We made an orange wine for the first time, and but it was a very small amount, just 300 litres or so, or 400 litres. Well, it was about half a ton, 600 kilos of grapes, but then we don't have a press small enough. So we basically squeezed it through a packing crate using my hands, and that was, I mean, you know, we got the yield was terrible. And then we had some friends helping pick, and we got them to foot tread, what, about 200 kilos or 150 kilos of Carignan. Yeah. So, you know, when you're a small place, you can do all these fun things. Why not?
Yeah. That sounds like quite a workout.
It's surprisingly hard work, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So we get some different comments up on the in the chat, right? Some people saying it's light, some people loving the nose, some people saying good value, and integrated tannins.
Andy, can you tell us the prices of all of the wines, just so that they've got that benchmark? Because obviously we did like a pack.
Yeah.
But if you could.
Right. I'll issue the request to the audience, who will come in and shout them at me momentarily. I should know, but my focus is mostly on Spain, and my other half essentially is the star who does most of the selling in the UK. So,
and Andy, why do you think? I mean, definitely, it's really hard to see much presence of Catalan wines over here. But what do you think are the things why people haven't heard of them before, or why do you think it's been such a struggle to give them visibility?
I think the problem is people associate Spain with cheap. And a lot of these wines, are artisanal, they're handmade, they have, unfortunately, costs that you need to cover. So they can't be the sort of $4.99 Tesco type wines. And if people are not familiar with them, if they don't have a recommendation, it's very difficult to ask people to spend a tenner or 15 quid on a wine from a region they've never heard of. So, we've been struggling manfully to convince people, and fortunately, people are buying the wines because they're discovering something that is good value. It is good value at a different price point from what they would expect for Spain.
Wow, I just saw the prices. That's amazing.
Yes, your son Andy's put
right, yeah.
there on the chat. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Oh, someone's drinking a shepherd's pie. That sounds delightful. I miss shepherd's pie.
Oh yeah, we'd be very good about that.
Have we got any more questions from the audience? Because it's a good opportunity. We've got the producers here. We've got Amelia here, Soma. We're all ready for whatever you want. I mean, good opportunity.
It's worth saying, just because we didn't mention it earlier, that the wines that we choose for different wines and buy Catalan wines, Andrew plays a big role in sourcing those for us. He's a demonic taster, so if you want a tasting note on pretty much any wine that's ever been produced in Spain, you can go into this massive spreadsheet, and he's got everything scored on a very unique scoring scheme. I have to say, I'm not quite sure I understand it, but everything has a mark, and it's spot on in terms of finding the wines for different wines.
Yeah, because the wines we've got next week, which we're tasting, they're premium Catalan wines, so they're like another level, a step up. And you don't often think about those really expensive wines coming from Catalonia, but they aren't that expensive. But compared to
quid on a Rioja, but they wouldn't necessarily think of spending 50 quid. Perhaps they'll spend that for a Priorat because they might have heard of that. But,
yeah.
You don't need to spend 50 quid. You can spend 20, 25 and get some absolutely stunning world-class wines.
Yeah, and I'm like, we've got the Cava next week as well, which I'm really looking forward to. I haven't opened that, obviously, because it would go flat by then. But yeah, we had a question earlier about the difference between Cava and Chacli, because Chacli has a spritz to it, and I think Andrew answered that question. But you mentioned earlier as well that Cava is kind of breaking up, so it's more like like a lot of Spanish sparkling wines, not just Cavas these days as well. So we've got that to look forward to. Then there's the Seigneur Blanc, which I absolutely love. That's so good.
That's a 100% white Grenache, which is the speciality of our area.
I love the white Grenaches.
Really seems like you should come back over here sometime. LA is obviously not treating you very well.
A few little obstacles, but otherwise, yeah.
And then we've got the Chispa as well, which seems to have already got a name for itself, because when we first opened this up, people were already saying, I can't wait till next week because we've got the Chispa.
Well, sadly we only made 2,000 bottles of it, and I was thinking, well, this is fantastic because over a number of years we'll gradually see it develop and sell it slowly. And we're almost sold out of it because everybody has latched onto it as a fantastic wine, not only from a quality point of view, but from a price point of view. So I'm just trying to persuade Andrew not to sell all the stuff we've got left in Spain, because we need to keep a few to see how it develops over the next few years. It's definitely got 5 to 10 years life left in it. So be interested to hear people's views on it next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's the interesting thing about being a small operation. Each year's different. As Andy said, we're still learning. And, you know, when it's done, it's done. I mean, the Chispa, we made, what, 2,000 bottles, Andy, I think, or 2,100, which, you know, might sound like quite a lot, but to be honest, it's not. You know, it's not.
Have I frozen? No. I was just having a look to see what questions we've got through. What makes it vegan? That's a question I always love answering, but if someone else wants to answer it this time.
Yeah, I can do that one. What makes it vegan is by not putting into the wine anything of animal origin. So in the wine process, some people, you can use things like gelatin, egg whites, isinglass. There's all sorts of things you could use, which make it non-vegan. All our wines, we don't, although we're not a natural wine producer, we do use additives. We don't use any of animal origin, so all our wines are vegan. And it's not particularly unusual. I mean, quite a lot of wines are vegan, and I think as there's more awareness of this, of the issue and the fact that more people are vegan, probably more people will be putting it on the label. But until 2 or 3 years ago, I mean, it was almost like a non-issue, right? Yeah.
It's a bit like you know, low sulfite. So Andrew and I continually have discussions, shall we say, in quotes, about how much sulfites to put in our wine. Andrew is very much an advocate of low sulfur. I'm an advocate of wine that I'm going to be absolutely certain is going to live till I can sell it to somebody. So there's a bit of tension there. And but all our wines, again, if you look at the maximum permissible amount of sulfur content, sulfur dioxide content, is a lot lower than we could put in. And again, it's about trying to keep the wine pure and natural, but without necessarily blessing it with the quotes of being a natural wine.
Great. We've got just a couple more questions. We've got a question here, which I love. I can smell Christmas pudding in the wine, in the white. Any ideas why that is?
Wow.
Yeah, I just tried to answer that. I'm not 100% doing well on the chat there, but I think for me, Chirello sometimes has a sort of fennel character. And fennel, you know, is a bit sort of clovey, spicy that you sometimes get in Christmas pud. So that would be my guess.
It's aniseed, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then we also love a bit of competition. Where else can people find Catalan wines in the UK?
I think quite a lot of your favourite wine merchants will have 2 or 3. They'll have Priorats, they'll have Carvers, obviously. Will they have the slightly more esoteric DOs, the regions from around Catalonia? Not so sure. One to look out for, which is getting more prevalent now, is Montsant. If you look at the geography, Priorat literally is surrounded by Montsant, and a lot of the soils and the things that are really important in wine quality are similar, but the price could be a fraction of what you pay for a Priorat. So look out for Montsants. You will find them in your local wine merchants. And if you don't find them, ask them to get some, because if you as consumers actually ask for these things, they'll respond and they'll start to stock them.
Also Spanish restaurants.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, in fact, one of our best customers is a restaurant in Manchester called Tast Catalan, which is owned partially by Pep Guardiola. So those of you who are footballers who love Manchester City, Pep is the manager of Manchester City. And he runs it in conjunction with Paco Perez, who is a multi-Michelin starred chef based in Catalonia. And they have a range of our wines, and we can't ship them fast enough to them when they're operating. Sadly, they're shut at the moment.
Yeah.
When they're open again, go there. It's fantastic.
Then back to the sulfite comment. I've not heard of sulf-free, but that seems to be something you can put in your wines to...
That's... Sorry, I'm not going to say it.
I think sulfites is a very interesting debate, and perhaps one that needs more time than we've got available tonight. But
come back next week. Maybe we'll do
if you
that.
drink orange juice or you eat dried fruit, you're consuming far more sulfites than you'd ever get from a glass of wine. But I do accept some people are sensitive to it, and Andrew, bless him, is much more sensitive than I am. So it's why we have some of these debates every now and again. But in terms of health issues, you need to make sure you've got the right scale for where wine sits, as opposed to some of these other things that we consume every day, seemingly without problems.
Yeah. And then a question on your lamps in the background, Andy. What are they pointing at?
Well, I also use this space for my mini music studio. I don't know if those of you who know Lee Isaacs is another Oxfordshire-based wine aficionado who's very big on Twitter. So I can actually, I'm a bassist, so I can pull up my bass and we can have some jams, and I record it on the computer behind me, and that's, you know, all part of the paraphernalia for the music system.
Do you play any now?
No. You don't want to hear it, believe me. Lee's much better than I am. So.
Well, I think this has been a fantastic session. Thank you all for coming. The time always flies, and I always feel that there should be like 4 hours of this, but I think everyone else would get bored of our voices. Didn't manage to get any of you to talk live, so if any of you are joining next week and want to, Beth raised her hand. Beth raised her hand. How do I answer that? How do I answer that? Can you see the raised hand?
When he leaps to the computer screen.
I can't actually.
Anyone raising their hand, but maybe it's because you're the host.
Okay, well, Beth, if you'd like to ask a question, I can get you. Oh no! Now I've made silence on the air. That's no good, is it? How do I answer raised hand?
You have to play the bass. See, this is the perfect time for a musical interlude.
It is. Oh, here we go.
Hello.
You take the microphone, if you can unmute Beth, or if she can do it herself, then we could hear her.
No.
Still muted, I think.
Are you able to
So
unmute Beth?
I've tried to unmute and it won't. I don't
Right,
know
okay.
if Beth want to. No answer. Okay, so Beth, if you
That could be next week's challenge.
please do that. Otherwise, just to let everyone know that as well as the premium Catalan wines that we've got next week, the next 4 that we've got coming up are a winemaker series where we focus on just one winemaker, which we've kind of done today, although there's 2 of you. But they are they're brands that you've really well known. So we've got Lismore, St. Clair, Gerard Bertrand, and San Marzano. So if you're interested in those, check out princessandthepinot.com. We're really excited about those as well. And then beyond that, we've got others lining up as well. So we're pretty excited about those too. So just sign up to the newsletter if you want to find out more. And something exciting that I want to share with you as well is Amelia's little thing on Saturday. Where she's doing a South African kind of love-in with the US and the UK. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing on Insta?
Yeah, so I on Saturdays I kind of do virtual like Zoom masterclasses where I try and support local businesses. A bit like it, but it's much easier to connect with the nation in England than it is the US. So I work with just one LA supplier, and then I have people come in. But with this, I really wanted to just really show people what was going on in South Africa. I love South African wines. I was there this time last year. And so I'm very lucky to be able to do a tasting and kind of chat with Andrea Molyneux of Molyneux Wines. She's amazing. She's actually Californian, but she's one top winemaker in the world. her winery, Molyneux Wines, is by the Platter Guide, which is kind of like the Oscars for South Africa. They've won Best Winery 4 times. And I'm actually doing it on Instagram Live, so anyone can tune in. No one needs to register. So if you're in South Africa, it's 9 p.m. If you're in the UK on Saturday, it's 8 p.m. And then for Californians, it's 12 p.m. Hey, we get to open up wine at midday. Great. And yeah, it's just going to be, just a very, but like we'll be talking, I've got 3 wines in the wine pack for that kind of Q&A chat masterclass.
One of them is one that we had last week.
Yeah,
so we had
exactly, the Chenin Blanc, yeah.
Yeah, the Chenin Blanc Secretaire. So if anyone didn't see that, everything that we do is recorded. I should have said that up front. Everything that we do is recorded, and then we put it on YouTube. So anything that you've missed, you can go back and watch. It's the Princess and the Pinot YouTube. So yeah, you can do that too.
So I'm using that Chenin Blanc, which I love, from Adi Badenhorst. We have one wine from Andrea, and then we've got a Hamilton Russell Chardonnay. So a traditional kind of winemaker, very iconic style of wine, with kind of 2 renegades in the wild west of South Africa. And but the thing is, you don't need the exact wines. A bit like here, like with Soma, like obviously it's great if you do have the wines, and they are luckily, definitely Secretaires is very widely available, and the Molyneux wines are fairly widely available too. But it's just drink South African wines, support the country. It's going through hell at the moment with no domestic wine sales going on. It's like the prohibition. Nuts. Can you imagine during quarantine and having a prohibition on top? Nightmare. And obviously it's a real nightmare for the wine industry there. So, but also she's just such fun. We get on really well. And so, yeah, it should be a fun mix of wine and talking about South Africa in general.
Sounds great.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm going to be joining that. Not on the panel, not as a chatty person, but someone watching it. I get to watch it. We've had so many people, Andy, say that we want to rendition, so maybe you can think of something next week.
Next week, for if you've not signed up yet for next week, I will play something for you next week.
Yeah, and if any of you haven't got the wines and want the wines, there's still time to get the wines. If you want to join us just to listen to Andy play, you're welcome to join us. You don't have to buy the wines to join. It's here for something for you to do and have some fun.
And I may accidentally hit the mute button at the wrong time, but who knows?
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Andy, Andrew, Amelia. I had a lot of fun today and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much, Soma. Thank you so much, Andy.
Right. Good evening.
Bye-bye. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.